Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Welcome to our California Institute for Human Science special 30-year anniversary event. Osteopathy and non-dualism is the topic this morning, and we're very excited to welcome our special guests, Dr. Michelle Veneziano and Marie Cushing. Before we dive in, my name is Nicole Ryle, and I'm the Director of Development and Public Programs here at CIHS. CIHS Enlighten is the sector of our institution that offers certificate programs, continuing education, and community offerings like the one we're hosting this morning. Throughout this year, we've been celebrating our 30 years by hosting distinguished and inspiring guests who are doing notable work and research in the mind, body, spirit fields. These events are made possible by your donations, and we thank you so much for your support. Throughout the program this morning, you are able to donate with our super convenient text code listed on my screen, or I'll provide a direct link in the chat box. And also, please stay tuned towards the end of our program today to learn more about upcoming events and how you can stay involved with our vibrant and growing community. We also have a very short, less than 1 minute survey after today's program. And now I would like to introduce our president, CIHS President, Dr. Thomas Brophy.
Thanks so much, Nicole. So, yes, welcome to this very special California Institute for Human Science 30th anniversary special live event. I'm Thomas Brophy, president of CIHS. And I'm just extremely delighted to be able to introduce today's two featured presenters. Both of our presenters today are very much connected with CIHS's mission and the philosophy of CIHS's founder, Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama. Marie Cushing is a visionary architect, educator, and advocate for health reform. She's an advisor to national and international health organizations, providing leadership and strategic envisioning of health reform. She served as co-chair of the executive committee board of the famous New York Open Center. Most fortunately for us, Anne-Marie is a trustee of CIHS. And Dr. Michelle Veneziano is a family physician, intuitive, and clinical professor. She is a practitioner of continuum movement, yoga, Buddhism, Tai Chi, tantric practices. Her practice of osteopathic medicine is based in cranial osteopathy, which is a hands-on, evidence-based therapeutic practice that sources both Western and Eastern philosophies to support the body's ability to heal itself. She is board certified in family medicine. She has served as staff physician at major hospitals.
Thank you, Thomas, so much. Is this my cue?
Yes. Sorry, a little bit of that.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
Stuff going on there.
Oh, welcome, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. This has been a long time in the making, and just the whole idea of connecting with CIHS came up, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, and I thought this is a dream for me. I mean, one thing that isn't in my bio, I realized this morning is I did a master's program for 2 years at the Academy of Intuition Medicine, which many of the board members of CIHS are a part of, and notice there are so many connections, and I'm just feeling a sense of belonging that I'm really loving in my body right now. So this topic, osteopathy and non-duality, how did we come up with that? It's actually quite a literal connection, and I want to tell some stories to illustrate the connections between what I consider presence is really at the root of all of it, and osteopathy, non-duality, and activism, and how all of those are one in my mind. And I thought in order to illustrate, we'd have an experience. Now we'll do a short meditation. Drop in, connect a little bit more deeply into the feeling space. I'm hoping this will be an experience versus a mental exercise for all of us, that we actually can learn more deeply. When we're more deeply connected to the body, or the body will hear a lot and receive a lot that the mind does not, right? And then we'll integrate and feel deeper meaning in what we're sharing. That's my hope and intention. So to begin, as we know that energy follows attention, if we begin to bring our attention down, very simply, tuning into where your feet touch the ground, maybe there's a quality of texture on your sock or a coolness on the floor. And we're actually going to set ourselves up for a little bit of moving, of a little bit more electricity, waking up the body, shifting from thinking to feeling sense. And in doing so, setting up the spine to be able to begin to move toward fluid. And that means our weight is forward. That means our knees are a little bit lower than our hips if possible. We're not sitting in a hole. If you have a pillow or a towel, you can elevate your sit bones so that you're moving toward a sense of ease in the breath. The moving of the weight, more than 50% typically, is really what allows the spine to begin to express a spontaneous fluid movement, which it's always attempting to do. The body's always attempting to move toward fluid, toward the receiving of more vital energy in our cells, and then a reorganizing and releasing of any tension patterns. So it might help to move to the front edge of your chair and the front of your sit bones. And you're not looking to follow my guidance exactly. You're looking for your body's guidance. Where is the sweet spot for you? Where does breath begin to become more supported and easy? We're looking for a sense of ease and support and expansion. And one of the things that supports that is bringing your attention into the nuances of your sensory experience in this moment. The minute my attention comes down, I actually feel heat start to burst. Minute I connect to the ground, especially if in this moment we can actually imagine a deeper connection to the ground, maybe a sense of our legs moving into the ground. Maybe one side is more forthcoming than another side. And maybe, as you know, our physiology does not know the difference between real and imagined, so that your body will begin to respond to this sense of deeper support. That might manifest as shoulders dropping, chest opening. Maybe there's a sense of your crown reaching toward the sky and a lengthening coming in. A sense of this simultaneous rooting and lengthening. I'm really naming in so many ways: mountain pose adapted to a seated position, mountain pose in yoga. And then as you remain attuned to your body and the space around your body with a soft gaze, attuning as much to sensation as maybe the sound of my voice, which is an extension of the resonant state in my body in this moment, attempting to connect us all on the same incoherence. There we go. Yeah, I'm actually feeling a little bit less separation now, and a little bit more expansion and fullness in the shared space. And I'm feeling my heart. And I'm feeling a little bit more fluidity in the spine. And then I'm going to bring in a few particularly osteopathic considerations. before we get on into storytelling time. So one of the things that happens so classically for Westerners in modern life, many issues that did not exist when yoga, qigong were developed, is that we have this rigidity at the bottom of our rib cages. Well, we have rigidity, period, and in the allowing of this serpent-like expression to begin to come through you as you move your weight forward and bring your attention down, the breath that really supports the nervous system and the endocrine system is not so much the belly breath, but more the breath that can come through the middle burner where the kidneys sit behind the diaphragm at the bottom of the rib cage. And our breath can be attuned in the context of fluid spine to massage the kidneys with every cycle, right? Kidney is the renal system, is the adrenal, the two walnut-sized glands that sit on top of the kidneys that largely not negotiate the stress response. So we serve ourselves deeply and beautifully by allowing our native breath to release that part of the body in real time. And as that gate opens, and as the attention comes down, and the current begins to move through the midline, central axis, we begin to have softness coming into the structure. We begin to have the experience of coherence coming into our field space. And then we begin to have the experience of the physical body, the physical breath, which includes the cranium and the sacrum, pulsing, expanding, and contracting in reflection of this coordinated, integrated breath as the physical body integrates with the electrical body. And I'm feeling that I can actually move into a cycling now that is matched with my sense of the shared space. So I'm moving in response to a larger awareness that we're all part of. And then we could breathe like this. We could breathe like this collectively for, 20 or 30 minutes and really do a lot of clearing and anchoring and healing. This is what we do. Practicing in my trainings, practicing the fitness for full body breathing, right? It's like full body breathing, life force, lung, gym, supported by a community, beautifully connected community experience. Okay. Last little piece is noticing if the resting of your tongue across the roof of your mouth has you drop in a little bit more. There's a way that when we have a native swallow, we actually have a well-conditioned tongue palate contact behavior function. We're able to recapitulate the experience of breastfeeding with every swallow 1,000 to 2,000 times a day, which is innately self-soothing and beautifully supportive of the vagal pathway because of the contact with that nerve where the soft palate meets the hard palate. There we go. And the just explaining of it, I actually felt the consciousness of that connection arrive in the space, right? It's like you're not going to necessarily understand this intellectually at this moment. And the energetics of what I'm describing are a palpable particular frequency. There's a consciousness, and my understanding of, my body understanding, my deeper than intellectual understanding is something that we transmit to one another, right? It's I felt it through my teachers. My body contains the medicine of all of those who've influenced me. And then in this shared space, we all have medicine in our bodies that contribute to the receiving of and integrating of this learning and healing. Okay. So I have found, hello everyone, we're sort of back. Hopefully we're going to actually remain a little bit dropped in and connected to the state we just cultivated intentionally. I'm going to speak in coherence with what I'm feeling so that we stay in the feeling state. Deeper learning from the feeling state, where the body wisdom begins to inform the mind. That's the zone of genius. So let's practice. Okay. Presence, osteopathy, non-dualism, and activism. I think I'll begin with one story. I actually have two stories, and I may come up with more than two stories, but this one is really inspiring and almost a magical occurrence that happened when I was in my family practice residency program. And it was as though the gods orchestrated this experience for me to really be, it's almost like I got this memo. This is your purpose on this planet. So I was in the emergency room, and my attending physician was a DO, brilliant doctor who did not use his hands, which is the nature of most DOs. More than 90% of DOs on the planet do not practice traditional osteopathy. That's just the nature of our culture at this time. And I was committed to doing it early on because I just couldn't not do it. And it was annoying because it was really challenging to actually do these almost two separate purposes simultaneously, right? Really master conventional medicine and really, really receive this deep transmission from this over 100-year lineage of amazing, 100-year, more than that. Osteopathy was founded in the mid-1800s. So we have quite a legacy, and it's quite an inheritance. And I'm hoping that I'm going to transmit what that means in this story. So my other attending was an MD, a really kind of playful fellow who loved to tease me about my holistic ways. I was always kind of adding in, a way to think more holistically when engaging with any patient. And I got a lot of grief for that. And I did my best to be good-natured about it. It was pretty fun. And one day, this woman came in, healthy woman, taking her kids to soccer, falls and hits her head on a curb, concrete curb, comes in with off the chart head pain, and everybody's bustling around. Her CAT scan's negative. She also happens to be not responding to any pain medication, which is very unusual. So we have the doctors there thinking, we can't discharge her and she's not stable, but we can't find anything wrong and we don't know what to do. So I'm on the edge of the room, and it was as though I was like, the universe tapped me on the shoulder. This is your cue. This is, and here I am. I had just finished my internship. I hadn't even used my hands probably that whole year in the internship. I really felt a bit out of practice with my osteopathic skills, but my body answered. I'm happy to try to help her. While my mind was simultaneously saying, there's no way you can do this. You don't know what you're doing. There's so much noise in this space. People are bustling everywhere. And they were like, go ahead, knock yourself out. So I went into the room. I sat at the head of the table, and I put my hands on her head, although I really honestly could have put my hands anywhere. I kind of let my body choose where my hands land. And I just tuned in. Now we're getting into the presence part, right? Not all osteopathy is about presence. There's a small segment of osteopaths who really attend to this subtle body, physical body integration. I would say no more than 90% of DOs are probably a bit more mechanically oriented. And I could hear, I could feel all of this kind of dissonant waveform of all kinds. There was her body, there was my body, there's what the room was doing, there's what, outside of the room was doing. And I just stayed with that. I just noticed it. I intended nothing other than to hold space and presence in my own body with this, skill that I'd practiced with my mentors and in my practices. And in about 10 minutes, the entire room, her body, my body, all came into focus. It was like a very dissonant, out of tune symphony of sounds suddenly became very harmonious. And in that moment, she jumped up off the table and said, "I'm great, thanks," and literally skipped out of the room. This was my MD attending. He was my supervisor that day. He came into the room and he's like, "What just happened?" I think I said, he said, my grandfather was a DO. He finally admits to me. And then I said, "Well, I guess you're okay." So then he said, "I actually am the head of the hyperbaric department, and we have a lot of really sensitive measuring equipment. I'd like to, what do you think? Should we design a study, and then we can kind of start to look at what happened, what might have happened?" And I thought that was a great idea. So he actually loaned me $50,000 transcutaneous oximeter, which measures blood flow and oxygenation of the skin. And I had this in my clinic for the better part of a year. And I designed the study that had myself connecting with patients and coming into presence and measuring what happened with blood flow. And then I used actually a receptionist who had no idea what was going on, who would come in and actually sometimes even watch the show while she was mimicking my position, right? But she had no sense of needing to do anything with her presence or grounding or breathing or anything. And the results were incredible. The sensors, we did not realize actually were able to pick up fluctuations in the heart rate, a wave called the Traub-Haring-Meyer wave. And this activity is a reflection of heart rate variability, which at that time I didn't really understand the significance of. But what I did know was that the Traub-Haring-Meyer wave was a reflection of autonomic nervous system balance. And so we essentially drew the conclusion that what had happened, with of course more studies needing to be taking place, was that the focusing of attention had the effect of bringing the nervous system into focus, into coherence, into regulated state. And then I went on to have a child and kind of fall off the map. I was really busy in my own clinical practice, hospital, and private osteopathic practice, and I published the abstract, but I wasn't actually able to publish the paper, and I probably will do that now with updated research. I'm actually really excited about that. The conclusion that presence would have this profound effect on bringing the nervous system into a regulated state. And then there are piles of research going back to the time of Erwin Core, PhD, physiologist, who a lot of the osteopaths really are so grateful for illustrating how directly health is affected by the state of the nervous system. It's really a very cause and effect direct relationship that is attended to in clinical and also research cultures. And in this community, really what we're also able to understand is that the subtle body and the physical body, the subtle body and the nervous system reflect one another. So we could actually really conclude that presence is what leads the body and the being into coherence, into the capacity to heal, and into the capacity to connect with our hearts. We started with presence, osteopathy. I think we've illustrated how osteopathy and presence are related. And then non-dualism. Let me address that. This non-separateness of the subtle and physical body. It's just very literal, right? We actually look at a lot of embryological, we look at the ways that we develop and how consciousness and energy basically form the physical being. And this is extremely literal, not metaphorical at all. For instance, at conception, the ball of cells, the morula, there's no structure in it yet, but the first thing that begins to happen is a wave moves through the ball of cells, and then a space forms, and then we begin to have structures of the primitive spinal cord form. So when I was in that emergency room and I was working with that woman, I wasn't attending to her body per se. I was attending to how it was that the coherence in the room supported coherence and stability in her physiology on a physical level. Basically, the energetics give rise to the physical. So that's my very literal definition of non-duality. This this sense that we, we're the first civilization, culture ever in history to not use energy to heal the body. So when people don't really understand how it is that the physical and the subtle are directly related to one another, it's really mystifying to me. Anne-Marie, do you want to jump in and comment?
Well, I think you're bringing out many of the aspects of which many of the audience are looking to experience, and certainly through the course study. But I'm glad that you brought up the aspects of energy and energy medicine, and because Dr. Mortiyama, the founder of CIHS, focus, of course, was the mind, body, spirit, and the integrated values of that, bringing consciousness and aspects of energy, whether it be the chi, the subtle energy of chi, or the spiritual aspect of subtle energy. And this is why we felt that you would be a wonderful representation and teacher for a program here, because we felt that many of the audience and people who are attending some of these courses would like to have something that they could not only manifest on, let's say, an intellectual basis, but also on an energetic base and have it manifest in a real physical feeling form. And so tell us more about that in terms of the course study that, you're offering this coming January.
Perfect.
And how this is why laboratories and labs are so important, so that we can have actual experiential courses, study. And I'd like for the audience to know that.
Yeah, thank you so much. We actually have to experience connectedness. We actually have to grow neurons and meridians for holding the state of connectedness, right? And presence. We're born experts. Everything we need to embody and be skilled in for healthy bodies and healthy planet are actually quite innate, and we're simply out of practice because our culture has so attuned to, mind function versus really being sensorially connected to the body. And we've had some personal conversations about how really somewhat that transition can be challenging if you're really adapted to a thinking self, right? Beginning to drop into rekindling your feeling self, which is your powerful self and your heart-connected self and your resource self that's able to be available for meaningful service, you're actually going to encounter conceivably some backlog of unprocessed things and need holding for that. And so the practicing of feeling, shifting from thinking to feeling, is really beautifully supported by a group practice. I mean, we're tribal beings. We actually borrow wiring and intelligence and grounding from one another. And there's also the beautiful experience of the social and playful aspect, all of which really support healing. So the whole point is, it's like coherence gym, right? We do these practices, we bring in some intellectual bits, but we actually, remain in coherence even when we're receiving information from slides we're all attuning to the whole space. We all build skill quite quickly. It's quite amazing. Even I have some medical students who've never even heard of energy, and they're rotating with me. They're in my office. They're participating in the classes, and their own innate skills can become rekindled very quickly because of the potency of the field, right? Once there's an amplification. And yeah, I remember experiencing early classes where I'd go to these big rooms of, we'd have all these treatment tables and we'd be learning and, while we were able to like be working on one another. And it was just such a rarefied, expanded experience. And then people would they'd go back to their clinics and they'd be sitting there by themselves. And it's just like, where's all the magic, right? So this expanding of or retooling of our systems to native wiring that really supports health and service and being connected to our hearts is really something that comes through a coherent and trained, playful, beautiful, supportive, caring environment. And that's really what does it. And so I don't find that in many. I remember early in my training going, what's wrong with this picture? All of these ways of learning are so disjointed and so disconnected and not exactly really gentle and caring and supportive of the being. And I thought, I'm going to do it differently. I remember one of my main mentors, Elliot Blackman, he's I'm so grateful to him, an amazing, brilliant elder of our profession. When I first started working with him, I think in the late 90s, he was my first osteopathic trainer. There wasn't much talking. There wasn't, he's a man of few words, and he's so beautifully present. And I remember I was bored and frustrated and I said, well, what's happening? And he said, don't worry about it. You're going to get it just by being in the room. And I didn't know what he meant. And I found that very annoying, but I'm explaining what he meant. What he meant was that there's a consciousness that can be connected with. And in the doing so in his body, my own body was able to remember that particular setting. So we train one another. And in neuroscience, we talk about mirror neurons and we talk about modeling, which is how in some way we do reflect and receive learning from one another. I, of course, think this is much deeper communication on a somewhat of a nonverbal level. This is very innate. Seems not we exchange subtle information energetically all the time, right? And then once we begin to actually drop into that language, navigating the world is so much more adventurous and so much, there's just no way to be bored. There's no way not to be in wonder. There's no way not to just, feel more connected and feel a sense of deeper meaning on every level. Did I answer your question?
Yes. So, the university's values are also which, that we want to provide for students, that support level on all levels, of, like I said, mind, body, spirit, and then thus going into the world and providing sustainable, help through those values and help towards others. So can you give us an idea or an experience of some, maybe
yes,
a student of yours or your own experience, which, that it manifested in some form of activism?
I have a great story for you, but first I want to respond to something you said just brought up in me, which is that we don't really understand how to be nourished, right? Like when our attention is in our heads, we're actually not being that energy does follow attention. We're actually not really awake in our bodies. We have to feel for ourselves to be functioning. And I'll say that I quote Dan Siegel, MD, all the time. He's the head of the MindSight Research Institute, and he's a clinical professor at UCLA, and his quote is my favorite: where attention goes, neural wiring grows and neural firing flows. And he's naming, right, that we actually have to be in our bodies to feel and know what to do. It's like I would love everyone to be able to sort of refresh to this more native body presencing, really able to be connected to body wisdom at all times, and then go out in the world and by transmission have the influence of creating more coherence in other people's bodies and in the environment. That's our most profound activism right there, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of energetics are we contributing to the collective field? It's all about the heart. It's all about love. Ultimately, I mean, this is so literal. It's unbelievable. I remember not long ago, I was treating this patient, really complicated patient, and magic is possible. I was tracking almost back in time from when she was born to almost into the future from when she was, and I was noticing all these tendrils of all these patterns in all these different time zones. And I was like, I'll be damned. They all begin and end in the heart. Structurally. No one ever taught me that. I saw it. And it was perhaps because I had spent so much time with this one person. This woman was really actually looking at potentially physician-assisted suicide when I met her because her brain and body function were so impaired. And pretty quickly she started to feel the spark, right? Because my attention was starting to train hers to allow more electricity to start to move through her body. And then healing is spontaneous. So I was retraining her by example. This is how we let the energy flow with our consciousness. Yeah, we did this dissolving and then reconstituting, almost like, dissolving into nothing, consciousness, fluid body, and then allowing all the physiology to gradually regrow. That's what we do when we do energy medicine. It's dissolving and then gradually reorganizing. And she is 100%. She swims in the San Francisco Bay without a wetsuit every day. There's no residual of brain or gait impairment that, really, it's quite remarkable what's possible. Why did I tell you that? Because the only thing that had that happen was presencing. I did not fix anything. That's a very feminine way of going about osteopathic medicine. We can sometimes fix things. Sometimes I'm actually told to fix things, like guided to be direct and have an impact on a particular joint or part of the body. But mostly it's allowing the being to rekindle its ability to hold all this electricity, intelligence, and power so that it is resourced in its own self-healing potential. We don't fix. Fixing is very masculine. The feminine approach is more about inviting, patience, creating space, a lot of waiting. And okay, so I'm going to launch into the story that I think is the one you might want me to tell. Here I am, I think it was 2015. And I was doing a lot of embodiment practice. It was the first time I really kicked it into high gear, and I was allowing myself to be dissolved on a pretty deep level. Like I was unburdening my system and really able to run a lot more power, I guess. And I was also allowing myself to be filled, and that I had never been in service from a place of resource, right? We overgive so much, especially doctors or any kind of caretaker. And I was actually filling up, right? I would call my training a filling up training. Fill up so that you can be in service from abundance and not from deficit, because that's actually not the energetic that's in true service, right? It's actually out of integrity and can distorting. It's distorting. How is it that giving can actually be taking if the energetics are not in alignment, right? That's actually codependency. That's one of our culture's addictions. So, then another name I use for my training is Cultural Conditioning Anonymous. So one of my spoof names, Empath Survival Guide, Be Your Own Darn Osteopath. I have like 25 of those. They're really fun. All right. So here I am full. I'm getting full because I'm doing all this beautiful practice simultaneously. I think I was doing, self-osteopathy. It's all self-osteopathy. Continuum movement is my foundational practice. And then I was doing some tantric practice actually in this window. That was a missing piece for me, which was really running energy and including, cultivating Kundalini and etc. And right, my initiation into that was from the Academy of Intuition Medicine with Dr. Francesca McCartney. And I'm lying there in my bed and I'm actually feeling really not good. Like I'm feeling malaise and my glands were swollen and everything ached and I was seething with resentment for this particular senator who was putting forth this bill that I thought was really going to be a detriment in health policy. And I was so angry. But I was lying there and suddenly my breastbone actually started to tingle. And then I felt, and this has never happened before and never happened since in quite this way, but it was distinct. My heart just went, and all this love came out. And my human self was like, he doesn't deserve that. I literally was trying to pull it back into my body. And then the love went out and it went to Sacramento and I could feel it. Don't ask me how. I felt it go into his body. He received it. He willingly received it. And then suddenly in one instant, all my symptoms were gone. My body was well from head to toe. And in that moment, I'm really loving, like, something beautiful just happened in this space, traveling back to that experience, that it was like I received a memo from the gods that said, love is, I know you're not wrong. That's a terrible thing. Making that person wrong, holding resentment toward that person is not going to be what heals it, as illogical as that may seem to your human mind. And so at that point, and that was 7 years ago, and I'm quite an activist, and, it's one of the ways that we're aligned in the wanting to transform medicine to something that's much more aligned with our nature. And, it's no surprise we don't have any idea what we're doing regarding health, because humans are so unhealthy and the planet is so unhealthy, and all of what we think is working, or it doesn't get, I think I'm remembering now what Paul Mills and Chamonix Jane were talking about on one of the last of these meetings, and just talking about how is it that we're going to be able to begin to not try to fix it through the vehicle that created it, the mind, right? But to actually start to get into connection with the body and entrainment with the expanded forces of nature, because then we actually log on to something where we can harvest an unlimited amount of power and intelligence, right? To get back to our God self. And so my activism became much more about cultivating coherence and presence and letting myself be guided by my body's communications with me. I mean, most people are walking around like kind of dull light bulbs, and then this is about rehydrating and waking up our systems so that we can really be connected with our guidance and our hearts. And I think I want to mention one really beautiful thing. This tongue palate work that we do is very profound. It's a very huge issue in modern, I would say 70 people I see walking around in the street, I can see and feel this connection is not happening. This is a placeholder. It's a stabilizer of awakeness. It's in Vedic teachings. There's a chakra in the roof of the mouth called the Soma chakra, that when the tongue and the palate are doing this intimate dance, it's 1 to 6 pounds of pressure, 1 to 2,000 times a day every time we swallow, if we actually know how to. And most people have no idea, and mechanical interruptions to that being able to manifest. Then the patency or the openness of this gate, right? Every joint is a gate in Qigong, is Taoist teaching, every teaching. that is that is naming how nature manifests in the body, recognizes that this is an entryway through which the flow of electricity through the central channel can happen and the heart can connect to the higher centers. And that's part of how our intuition comes in, because our spirit is like, oh, the heart is present to drive the mind, or the heart is present to actually receive guidance and respond responsibly and appropriately. So a lot of what we're really doing, it's a body thawing. It's really radical. It's like, I feel like what I'm doing is revolutionary, as simple as it is, and as innate and native as it is, and as much as we're born experts in all of it. It's just so beautiful and fun to, like, archaeologically start to dig out and, reactivate. It's like little dormant seed pods in the soil. It's like, what do we have to do to get the hydration in there, which is, really the nourishment. Our bodies are just like gardens. The nourishment, the sunshine, the love, the nutrients, and it's really all of this is delivered by being consciously present in the body, right? The consciousness, our conscious presence in the body activates our cell functions. It actually brings the water molecules that are in our body to life and begins to have them do their work of conducting electricity and amplifying power and taking us from kind of dull light bulbs to bright beings who can be in service in the world in a way that's really meaningful, because that's what our souls really want. Like, that's how we heal our hearts, right? Mm-hmm. To actually be able to be in meaningful service is possibly the most nourishing nutrient for human beings known, and our culture is oriented to the opposite. So we're in a little bit of a pickle.
Yes. And you mentioned the word hydration quite a bit. I know that we're going to be having another webinar next month with Gina Brio, and you're going to be talking about hydration and water and osteopathy. But give us more kind of an idea about the resilience during stressful times. We have a world that's right, challenging with all the various climate change and economic issues and also political dynamics. What is, give us a sort of a broader idea about what you're offering for this next course study.
Thank you. First of all, this course, it's so silly to call it a course. I call it a healing and learning experience, is my life's work. Like, I was actually pulled away from clinical practice and told to do this, as well as write a few books on it by my guidance. And I'm very different for having responded to that call. There's just so much activation and power and intelligence coming through my body. It's like, okay, we're going to reward you for putting your energy in the direction that you're guiding. We all need to know what that is. And that's actually part of my course. I think we spend 3 meetings. It's 1 hour and a half meeting a week. Plus we do healing practice, energy medicine, where we actually thaw our bodies so that we can continue to receive more, thaw and replenish once a week on Saturdays. We spend 3 weeks really receiving what presence is. We just practice breathing. We practice basically thawing. We practice having the experience of physical and subtle body integration, really land and become a state that will support the receiving of the learning for the rest of the course. Then we go into all the ergonomics and structural ways to get the body to be able to respond and breathe as a life force lung. The secondary breath of the body wants to and is able to reflect the pulsing in the subtle body, right? That's one thing. So we actually get the practicing, conditioning back to becoming in coherent entrainment, synchrony with the planet. And then we get everyone set on that. In the meantime, things heal. People start to have no back pain anymore, or, they start to heal their endocrine issues, their adrenal issues, whatever's needed to be healing. Once you wake up and come on and there's more electricity, then you have the ability to heal. And then we go into ways to move through space that actually heal your spine, and basically it's all of this native behaviors that support the movement and entrainment of every cell in the body in every moment. So there's quite a bit of fitness that can come through for people, and detoxification and hydration, right? The body is basically a wetland that's constantly pulsing if we're actually being who we were born to be. And then we go into polyvagal theory, because I just think it's so brilliant and helpful for people to understand more, fleshing out how it is that nervous system stability supports health. And that's all about community and co-regulation, and understanding how truly tribal we really are, and how essential it is to get back to that aspect of our nature. And then we go into all the tongue stuff and resetting the entire physical breath mechanism, which is also intensely reflective and interreflective of the nervous system state. So we're doing a lot of really practical didactic things that support the body's ability to stabilize in the nervous system, but also expand our range. So then we also look at coherence and heart, the heart sort of ties it all together at the end. And then we really dive deeply into the water science, which, Gina Bria of the Hydration Foundation is a really close friend. We just see the world so similarly. We're actually writing a book together. She was just appointed by John Kerry to the State Department to influence water policy, because we really need a much more expanded understanding of what meaningful hydration is, both for bodies and the planet. So that's going to be a deep dive in a couple of weeks that we're going to do.
Yeah.
The way that basically all these pieces that I bring in, I found it, that we remain in coherence no matter how intellectual we get, right? We establish this little mini range. This is where we begin at the beginning of the class. And then as we actually, each moment, imagine you're growing a new neuronal pathway for holding the regulated state. And then by the end of our 13-week experience, we're going to be here. And I have so many, it's just what happens. If it doesn't happen, you'll be the first one, because what I mean is what happens is that people say, I'm in the middle of my busy clinic, things are really crazy, this patient's coming in and yelling at me, or, my parent just died, and they're able to stay and experience and process and hold space and be neutral and not go into a bunch of stories or spin out or get sick, right? So we actually need to, and get to, it's all an invitation. There's no obligation aspect at all. It's all about really what's luscious. What's alive, right? It's really reattuning to all of what we call the health in osteopathy, capital H. You get more of whatever you put your attention on. So we cultivate this ability to stay connected with the light, and then have supported physiology and have the ability to be more supportive of ourselves and others in our home life, in our work life, in our communities. I think I covered it.
You did. You covered it, and also we could mention something about the CEUs and the various different.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing that I got an energy medicine class. It's also quite research based. Everything we're doing is evidence based, so that's all it takes to qualify for CME, for MD, DO, DC, chiropractors, nurses, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, pretty much. And then I think also psychologists. I think this course covers 33 units, and I don't know where you can get 33 units and heal and have a beautiful social, nourishing spiritually supportive experience.
Yeah. And this is what, CIHS is about. We want to really sort of support teachers and students in these exact values that you've been talking about, which is, very visceral, very feminine, also very intuitive based and experiential based classes that are also both of that service to the mind and the body and the spirit at large. And I feel that you're exactly doing that with your work in osteopathy. And we thank you so much, Michelle, because we feel that this is exactly what the times needs during our very, stressful times at large in the world. And we think that, this would give great value to the community at large. And so I think we have time for questions. Do we not, Nicole?
Hi, everybody. Yes, we do. I wanted to just take a quick pause and thank you guys for that really excellent presentation, Michelle. You can tell for those of you who don't know Michelle and are new to our community, excuse me, we wanted to welcome you. And you can tell from Michelle's talking that she is just so passionate about her subject and her expertise. I loved that how you said it's kind of a movement when you incorporate the consciousness, it's a movement from the dull to the bright being. And that to me just resonated because that's what you embody and that's what you are here to share, and you're sharing it so authentically, and we really appreciate that. Both of you, Anne-Marie and Michelle, you both are such authentic, kind of playful, bright beings yourself. So we appreciate you being here today. And again, this topic is just so inspiring and fascinating, osteopathy as a whole, and energy as healing. That's part of what we're here about at CIHS, and that which we research and study, as Anne-Marie said. And for those of you that are new to our community, you may or may not know that CIHS is a pioneer in these mind, body, spirit integrative education endeavors. So welcome to our community. We are so happy to have you here. We hope you stay in touch. And we'd also love your donation and your support. Your donation makes even more quality events like this possible and allows us to host remarkable guests like Anne-Marie and Michelle, who are here today with us. If you've already donated, thank you for helping us. And I'll go ahead and pop another link in the chat box for you as well. So at this time, we can open it up to Q&A. And there's a couple different ways to do that here. We can either use the Q&A box if you'd like to type your question, and Michelle and Anne-Marie can answer it live. Or if you'd like to speak your question, all you have to do is just kind of raise your hand, and I can give you a permission to talk, okay? So I think we've had a few questions coming in.
I see the questions. I'd actually like to answer them in a particular order, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah,
or
great.
Respond to them. I wonder, is Ellis present? Ellis?
Well, I've done craniosacral for a long time, and every once in a while, sometimes it feels like from different people will have the same sort of wavy pattern in a certain place. And I think, is that mine? Why would 3 people in a row have that? and sometimes, and I just chronically have a worry that I'm actually hurting people rather than helping them. It's like this deep soul worry or something. So anyway, I just wondered how you would answer those questions.
Well, I'm curious, like what when you feel into this deep soul worry, what's in there for you? Can you say a little bit more about that experience and how you feel it in your body?
It's real, I just immediately want to cry, and I don't know, it's just popped up throughout my life. I'm worried that my presence is actually going to kill people.
I guess my question would be, how supported are you? And my sense is I would be curious to feel into the balance for you and your experience of giving and receiving, right? That because you're not doing the work and you're not really in charge of what's happening if you're really connected.
Right.
Right. And are you allowing that for yourself? You may not have the answer. I'm just posing a curiosity to sit with, because my body's telling me to do it, to say that to you. Right? So it's not so much a figuring out thing. It's a feeling for the deeper thing, which may not have words, and letting yourself connect to what would support you in those experiences. So I'm drawing you back to presencing. And you may be undersupported. You may be missing an element. I don't know that outside of, for instance, the people that I connect with to kind of get reality check and support in we don't do energy medicine in a vacuum. There needs to be some kind of communal place that you can go and be restored and simply breathe and receive. It doesn't mean it could be, are you spending time with your girlfriends, going out and having adventures, or doing things you love, or, doing the things that are play for you. And I'm naming also specifically that when we fill up, if we're full and coherent, we are firstly there's less space for people's energy to get in and distort us. So you may not feel like you have enough safety or like containment in your space running the treatment. So that's an important piece. But then you mentioned something about multiple people having the same pattern. Typically, that's very common. What will be happening is your attention will be drawn to, if we're needing to learn something, we will have people walking through the door of our offices
they come in 2s and 3s all the time.
Yeah, they do. And so that's evidence of guidance, right? And then because we're all addicted to seeing what's wrong, beginning to attune yourself to, wow, I'm actually kind of being supported by the universe by this. There's evidence that good things are happening. Gee, that's very different than the narrative in my head. It's pretty much the narrative in the head is a not a good place to be, right? So conditioning yourself to continue to tune into the body and follow the electricity and the aliveness, and start to practice noticing what's right versus noticing what's wrong. In feminine osteopathy and in craniosacral, taught the feminine way, which is not always how it's taught, we pay attention to the health. We do not fixate on lesions. We do not fix. We breathe and we receive. And my question to you is, are you breathing and are you receiving? And it feels exciting that you have some research to be doing, to be receiving in your life.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And I think, Michelle, that you and I have spoken about having another webinar on breathing itself, just like we're doing on hydration.
Sure. Osteopathy is breathing. This is true osteopathy. Is a reset, and craniosacral is allowing the cranium and the sacrum to unfix because of all of our trauma and weird ways of sitting and not breathing and distorted walking. That's a big topic. I love native walking and how beautifully it sculpts the entire body. But in any case, this integrating of the physical and subtle body is the reactivation of breathing at the deepest level. Every cell in entrainment with the planet and constantly flushing the tissues of the body with nutrients and hydration and consciousness, like a wetland that's alive, right? As opposed to this sort of dull, sleepy, what actually feels like beef jerky to my hands when I treat patients. It's like, oh, we actually have to resuscitate here. And I can only guide that process if I'm resuscitated, right? They're going to mirror me. If I'm dehydrated, dull light bulb, they're not going to remember the bright setting, right? We actually embody that, and then we don't likely injure our patients. So that's sort of responding to the part of wondering if you're injuring patients. Yeah, that's a hard place to be. And I'm really grateful that you are willing to name it. Be vulnerable with that. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
My favorite is live.
We have one from Elizabeth here.
Uh-huh.
Elizabeth asks, speaking of water, can you please recommend any whole house water filtration system?
I'm not really a gadget recommender, but it's a great opening to a little bit of the water topic, which is that, right, so water in nature and raindrops and lakes and is actually quite electromagnetically potentiated. You know, we live in a very potent electrical environment and you know, exchange of current between the ionosphere and the planet, which are oppositely charged. So we're living in, and this is, I love that I'm getting to name this, like part of what supports full body breathing is the I'm sort of feeling it just thinking about it now, because Richard Feynman, he's a brilliant physicist. Well, I think he's not alive anymore. He mapped out all this current exchange between the planet and the ionosphere and how the bodies participate in this. And this is how it is that water becomes biologically compatible, right? It can't be this unenergized water and then have the right surface tension, literally, to make its way through the cell wall and support cellular metabolism. So I really love devices that restore water to its biologically compatible state. And my favorite one is the Aqua Energizer. It comes from the Wellness Enterprise, and that's separate from a filter. But the way that when the water becomes more like a gel matrix, it actually complexes out impurities, which then stick to themselves and change in their reactivity. So for instance, fluoride becomes inert. It sticks to itself. It's no longer, it moves through the body, but it's not absorbed. Calcium, on the other hand, becomes more biologically available. It's actually really challenging to get calcium into the body. So there's so much potential in restoring water to its native state. And I bought one of these and put it on my house. And I had undrinkable water in the upstairs bathroom. There was like rust and it just tasted horrible. Like the pipes were dirty. It's, you know, my house is from 1912. And I put this Aqua Energizer on the water main probably 40 feet away, and the water's great. So it's like, no, we didn't take out the impurities, but they've become basically not, they're not tasteable, and also when I drink the water, I feel great. So whatever it was that was toxic about that water is restored by structuring devices. And there are so many of them out there. And there's so much science on how it is that we restore water to its biologically supportive state. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the class too.
Yeah, our mutual friends that also are water experts, such as Maxie Cohen and Gina Brio, also they're hosting, or certainly Maxie is, an event tonight in New York City of a water specialist, and supposedly his product is wonderful. His name is Kenny Liu, L-U.
Oh, Kenny, I think I know. I don't remember the name of his technology.
Yeah, Spring Aqua.
Yeah, Spring Aqua. I've heard he's very spiritual. He brings a lot of almost like homeopathic and astrological awareness into how it is he created
the structure of water. Yeah, he really so supposedly he's very good, but I haven't tasted it myself, but my friend who's quite, you know, she's very much into this, Maxie, would definitely know. So you might want to look into that.
Yeah, I want to do, I'm excited about that because I didn't know about it. I want to answer Elizabeth's question a little bit more specifically. I still do filter water at my home, and I like carbon block. I don't like a reverse osmosis because that renders the water pretty dead and takes out all the minerals. As lovely as it is to think that clean is better, actually what you want is to mimic what works in nature. nature's not clean. You know, we have all sorts of elements and we have all sorts of microbes, and those are necessary. We don't need to sterilize the universe to support health or medicate it for that matter. And so I do like one affordable unit called Aqualab, I believe. It's an affordable water structure and purifier. So I think it's worth naming that company is doing a good job.
Well,
if we don't have any more questions, we would love to thank you both for being here, as well as all of you that have attended in the audience. And I just wanted to take a moment to remind you of Michelle's course that's coming up, Cultivating Resilience in Stressful Times. She was able to speak really beautifully on what that course is going to entail, and it's a much more of a deeper dive into a lot of the topics that we were talking about today. So that begins in January. Feel free to email myself or Michelle with any questions regarding the course. And then the Hydration and Conscious Movement webinar, similar to this one, will be in a few weeks on December 1st. And Gina Bria will be here with Michelle, and they'll continue this conversation about hydration and water. And I'm sure we'll get into some meditations and into the body and into some osteopathy principles as well there too, Michelle, right?
Yes, we will. You bet.
Great, great.
I just want to say thank you so much, Michelle and Anne-Marie. And it was just a wonderful range of conversation. You even brought in physicist Richard Feynman, which is wonderful. I just really enjoyed it very much.
Beautiful. Well, we did too. And we'd like to also just congratulate CIHS for its 30th anniversary. And it's a deep pleasure to work with everybody at the school. It's my honor to be part of it. And the programs that Thomas and Nicole offer, these, wonderful public education programs have added so much. And I know that Michelle will bring much of her knowledge and the beautiful, intuitive, feminine, visceral, and like I say, more experiential aspect to teaching. And I think people will find it of wonderful value.
I feel so welcome and supported and seen by all of you. And that's a really powerful, beautiful experience I'm really grateful for. I'm grateful for the presence of the school. I'm just so happy that we're, firstly, I just said we, so I feel like a part of it, which is really great.
Right.
And that this is the time in history for our work to really have an impact on the planet, and it feels extremely powerful and a massively blessing. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Anne-Marie and Michelle. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us. And we look forward to connecting with you further and seeing you at some of our further events. And again, thank you for your donation. Thank you for your support. If you are interested at all in learning more about our academic programs or our public programs, please don't hesitate to email us. All right. And this recording will be available to everybody who registered. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.